So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe it was due to the last session on privacy, which decided it was so lively, and we had a participation of persons who are active in ensuring our privacy online. Let me start off with a few words by way of introduction, and then we would get it over to you. And we are only facilitating this discussion or introducing new topics. What is privacy? What do we mean by that? This is a right of every human being, to say it very concisely. It is the right to keep our data private, to properly manage our data on the network, and the privacy is very multifaceted. First, what we do with our data, what we do with other persons' data, what we do with the data of our loved ones, our children. We talk a lot about the role of parents in the protection of children's data. It is also how do we interact with Facebook, Google, and the representatives of which we had on the previous session. What do we do to properly steer our data in the business world? And another challenge is how to teach youths to have the right respect for the data of other people. Another interesting aspect is that in the recent presentation on privacy, we had some statistical data from Germany, how much we are keen on protecting our data, and at the same time, with this jogging fashion, everyone is using the tracking programs, and that deprives them of this privacy effectively. So there is such a multitude of the topics to the general theme of privacy, and it probably led to it winning this contest. And you are no longer the same persons as you were 2 days ago, because you've learned so much and you've been so much inspired. Let me also add that we selected one of the 3 topics. Well, I also voted, so we've selected the topic of privacy, but it immediately connects with other issues. For example, cyberbullying, cyber violence, because whenever the privacy is infringed upon, we have problems. That would be by way of introduction. Now we'll get it over to you. Please raise your hand if you want to speak, and then start and continue this discussion in this area, and raise this, bring up this area of privacy that you are interested in. So we have the first bold person. I'm not sure whether you are going to applaud me after what I say, because I wanted to return to the ID topic at the headsets for interpretation, and I wanted to advocate for not leaving the IDs with the interpretation personnel. I'm not suggesting that they are going to copy it or use it, but 2 years ago I noticed that a gentleman who was taking care for the IDs, he just went away and they were completely unprotected. So as an organizer, I need to answer, because these are our efforts. Unfortunately, the business regulation in interpretation business is such that the only option is, if we were not to have to leave the IDs, we would have to take the full responsibility for financing the lost headsets. We don't have the authority to write the agreement to such an effect. And one headset costs 700 for your information. It's so valuable. Well, not only as organizers but also as moderators. So we can say that this is the statement on privacy and privacy protection and the active attitude in advocating privacy. And this is also taking place on the level of regulations.
Real bold person who start. Concerning the first issue, it happens actually to us, and we lost 2 sets before in Egypt. I'm Islam Omran from Egypt, from the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology. We organized something before in Egypt, and we lost 2 sets because of the problem of the IDs were not left there. So I understand that it is important. Getting back to the privacy online, I'm sure that colleagues have tackled all the privacy issues and how Facebook is not that utopia place, and we don't have to reveal our personal information, and we don't have to put all the information that is important on the websites or on the social media and those things. But I feel that the world needs to make some sort of, let's call it a letter of ethics, for example. Among all the important entities in the world, that they have all to sign it. All the big companies like Facebook, for example, like all the social media or something, that they will not abuse or misuse the information that they are collecting. I think this should be some sort of a world trend that we have to collaborate ideas about. They must be signing this contract. Let's call it. It's a code of ethics or so, telling exactly that they are not allowed to spread information to certain bodies or entities that could misuse or abuse the privacy of the subscribers, even if they put something that they have all the rights to do whatever, but still they have this code of ethics that they have to maintain.
Thank you. Czy ktoś chciałby coś dodać, w jakiś sposób się odnieść?
Anybody would like to add something or start some other topic in this area?
Yeah. So, I mean, on the discussion of privacy, we've been very concerned about things that touch the individual a lot. So there was a lot of discussion about exploitation of a picture or a violation of personal privacy. But I think there's this bigger picture that we fail to see. I mean, there's sociologists in the beginning of the 20th century that were dreaming of creating a real model of society to understand how the whole society behaves, to understand society and the human being, you know. And with the advances in science and in neurosciences, and the fact that you have these huge communities where, you know, you can test in a live manner their reaction to certain things, like manipulating their news feed, showing them certain news, etc. I feel that we're at a time where we can be treated basically as guinea pigs for social experimentation, just to understand more deeply how we function, even at a subconscious level, and make us do things that control us in the sense of for commercial purposes or for political purposes. For instance, identify our political pensions, trends way before even anything even happens. And I think this is much more serious than a picture getting lost. Or somebody, just getting a hold of information about you. This is about, democracy, freedom, things that are much, much higher up the ladder. And I don't see any way around this except to have very stringent regulation and to have a public debate about this openly, about what should or should not be permitted on exploitation of big data. because we've seen examples where this is extremely beneficial, optimizing, for instance, energy, energy income or sources, whatever, in solar panels, in wind turbines, etc. But there are also extremely controversial ways of using this big data, and I think it's been insufficiently addressed.
Thank you. Czy ktoś ma coś do dodania? Chciałby się jakoś odnieść do...
Anybody would like to add something to it? Or maybe start some other point?
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much. My name is Wojciech Grabowski, and I'm a journalist as well as the president of the Journalist Association Professional Arbitration Body. We also publish a weekly in Warsaw. And as this wonderful conference is coming to an end, I would like to depart a little bit from the statement made by a lady discussing the question of personal data protection. I must say that I'm really impressed by the way this conference has been organized. So I can do nothing else but applaud the organizers. And as for the topics that you discussed today, that were also touched upon in Krynica during the economic forum there, and I had the pleasure of participating in this forum. So some of the panels touched upon the topics that you proposed for this conference. And just one thing that I would like to refer to. Some of the speakers and panelists spoke about methods that can be used by parents in order to keep their kids a little bit more away from the computers. Dr. Oczko, the doctor of two Polish kings, once said, movement can replace almost any drug, but even all the drugs in the world, if they're used together, they cannot replace movement. So this is the idea. In order to attract children to other things than just computers, I propose a movement. For many years, I've been organizing the Cooper test, and I would like to invite everyone to come to Skra Stadium on the 10th of October this year. We shall be having another Cooper's test. You have 12 minutes, and you have to run for as long a distance as you can, or walk very fast for 12 minutes, and then you are tested. We test your blood pressure, we test other parameters, and we take into consideration your age. The Minister of Sport, Mr. Koller, will be there. Journalists such as Mr. Babiš will be there, Mr. Lis as well. So I would like to cordially invite everyone to appear in Skra and just keep up the good work. Congratulations. Thank you very much for these words of appreciation. Movement is indeed very important. However, if we can just go back to privacy, the topic of our debate today, what Martin has said is indeed very important and crucial from the point of view of data we provide others with. A lot of comments were made as regards Facebook, and maybe you would like to refer to some statements made, such as the fact that Facebook is responsible and should live up to this responsibility, making sure that real names are used, young children do not use Facebook. And the question is, should we expect Facebook to accept all this responsibility in terms of transparency, information about the data? Because if a car dealer sells you a car, he is no longer responsible for who is driving. So maybe this is just a form of business. Maybe it is up to the parents, up to the caretakers, up to schools. Well, if I may, I will not be referring to the business aspect, but some of our conversations in the conference lobby led to the fact that education is very important. We make sure that our image offline is as we desire. So maybe we should make both the parents and the youngsters aware of the fact that the digital image is important and no protection is effective enough if people are not really aware of what happens to the information they upload to the internet. This can actually influence our lives. Well, thank you so much for this comment. Maybe you have some personal experience in terms of preventive or educational activities. Well, yes, my name is Kana Wyśląski from a Panopticon Foundation. There was a comment about Facebook and large companies, large corporations, and yes, indeed, it is right to remind ourselves that the internet is part of our physical world. It's got a physical structure, very big servers. They are located in the United States. They have to comply with regulations, also environmental regulations. They try to be very environmentally friendly. They do not want to generate heat. But why do they have such a strict policy in terms of environmental issues? Well, this is because they have tax exemptions if they are considered an environmentally friendly company. So this works. So both the state and the business should be more responsible in terms of securing not just the physical infrastructure, being environmentally friendly, having efficient servers. They should also try not to pollute the internet. And of course, on one hand, there is a big role to play for the parents, for the teachers, for the caretakers. However, we should also expect transparency from big corporations. You have probably heard about the recent case of Volkswagen. Volkswagen is facing real trouble because they have not been transparent in terms of results of the tests of the environmental indicators of the exhaustion fumes from the diesel engines. So, as companies should respect certain rules, and we as consumers, as clients, should expect the companies to improve their standards. Of course, if we do not pay for services, this does not mean we are not paying for the service. So if companies have to show us how they make money because of our participation in their services or their communities, they will probably be more responsible. If they are responsible, maybe they will have more users, more billions of users, and probably we are the right people to talk to. Facebook to Google. Google, for example, has a huge package of services for schools. And why should they be more protected than other applications? Well, because this is a sensitive target group. Children are sensitive, and maybe we should force them to keep the service in Poland, and that would also force them to comply with the Polish law, with the Polish regulations. And of course, some of these, we have to remember that these applications are helpful in the process of education, but some of the internet services are constructed in such a way, and we heard yesterday about gambling and pornography, and we had great examples of a porno site and a gambling site targeting teenagers and children. So we have to make sure that services have to be constructed in the appropriate way. And maybe this is a hopeless fight, but we are trying. Would anyone like to refer to this statement? Well, thank you very much. I would like to agree with the previous speakers. However, as I conduct a lot of lectures and workshops on the security online and how to manage privacy online. And Facebook, well, almost everyone uses Facebook. Almost everyone has a profile. And young people told me during classes, we are talking here about personal data, about the protection. However, Facebook requires us to give them our name and our address. So maybe we should, well, try to somehow force Facebook to accept anonymous logging in, a nick. Maybe this should only be available to administrators. Maybe other users should be able only to see the nick, not see the actual name. And I do not want to give you examples of some very unpleasant situations that Facebook users encountered only because of the fact their name and the school they attend were public, also their address. So with Facebook, we should probably try to negotiate these things. Young people see no problem in paying in form of the personal data for free applications or so-called free applications in Google Play or other Apple Store, for example. They say, well, if I am to pay with money, I have no money, so I prefer to pay with my data, and I'm no longer concerned what happens to this data. And this is why education is so important and awareness raising is so important. Thank you. Good afternoon. What I would like to say is that I disagree because logging in with a nick contributes to people feeling more anonymous. And if people do not act under their own name, they have a feeling that they can insult someone, they can attack someone, and this will never be detected, they will never be punished. People feel more anonymous.
Tak, to jest często, szczególnie w dzisiejszych czasach wobec tej fali.
Well, in the world today, with hate speech, aggression, an argument that is often used. Yes, I agree with you. Thank you so much for this comment. However, it is not important whether you log on with your nick or your name. If you want to insult someone, you are going to do it anyway. And education is of utmost importance. We have to tell young people that they're not really anonymous. It is just an illusion of being anonymous. It is just like the real world. You can do anything you want, but if you break the law, someone will try to find out who you are and who you have acted against. So education is of utmost importance when it comes to young people. We teach them about different rules and regulations. We should also teach them about the rules and regulations of using the internet. Thank you. Are there any more speakers asking for the floor? Well, let me just add on to something that has already been said. Yes, we have to educate, we have to teach, but we also have to say that it is not just to observe the rules that is important. It is also important for young people to understand what are the business models, how actually these companies operate, and based on that, young people could take their own decisions. For a lot of people, it is not obvious how advertising functions, that advertisements are profiled and targeted based on information collected from the data that we upload. Maybe default settings should go in a different direction. So maybe we should have default settings that restrict what others see. So good protection should be standard for such companies. So just very briefly, I have been thinking about this. However, some words of criticism were said about Facebook. And this is a good example somehow discussing certain issues results in changes. We have to remember that default settings on Facebook until 2014 where everything was public and you had to do change the settings in order to protect the information. So this attitude of Facebook changed in 2014 and now not everything is public to begin with.
I would just like to react to a few things that were said. First of all, I think the question of data and paying with your data, the biggest problem is that consumers or users don't have a choice nowadays. You don't have the choice to decide that you want to pay $10 per year for Facebook so that you see no advertising and that your data is not exploited at all. You don't have that choice. You don't have that choice for Google. You don't have that choice for none of these services. So it's almost as if you've been forced to use your data to access those services. It's not a choice. Whereas if you look at free apps online, you can download an app for free, but usually you also have a full version that you can pay for $5 or whatever, like Angry Birds or whatever. You can pay for the full version and then you see no advertising, and normally they should not collect any data about you. So it's this is the question of choice. Then about the question of anonymity and online, I don't think it's that much of a phenomenon that, you know, it's because you're anonymous that you cyberbully. If you look at bullying in the real world, it's more the sentiment that you're not going to be punished for what you're doing. So if, for instance, you want to beat up someone, you're not necessarily going to put a mask, but you're definitely not going to do it in front of the teacher. You're going to wait until, you know, that victim crosses a corner where nobody can see you, and then you're going to do it. The victim probably knows you, they know your name, but they're going to do it because they feel that there's no one to watch over them or to punish them. And that's also the problem of online communities, huge online communities. We need to rethink how we can moderate those communities, make sure that you know, comments that are insensitive or whatever get flagged quickly, get taken down quickly, and also that there's kind of this democracy and debate and conflict solving ethics in these communities. So people that interact with you saying, why did you do that? Maybe you shouldn't have used these words, whatever. But not having the sense that this sentiment that when you post something, it takes a week to be taken down and nobody will ever notice because it's just flooded in a billion other messages and posts. And thereby, you will never be punished, even if you use your real name.
Tutaj jest zgłoszenie.
Yes, I would like to reply to your comment by coming back to the example for the ID when getting the headset. So I left my key card from the hotel because I don't want to have my ID there. So sometimes it's good not to follow the rules. And when you say you don't have a choice, I say you don't need to be a member of Facebook. So you don't need to have a Google account. I don't have a Google account, I don't have a Facebook account, and I'm still fine, I think. So, oh, I see myself on TV. The other thing is, this is to you, Volkswagen, I think, is still a good company. And those companies like Google and Facebook are private entities. And we cannot force them to follow our rules or governmental rules or whatever. It's a private entity, it's a free market. And in Germany, for example, both companies, Google and Facebook, are a member of my organization. And that means they have committed themselves to do more for the youth protection than the German law requires. And as I said yesterday in my presentation, the German law for youth media protection is one of the most severe legal regulation in the world. So they have already committed themselves to do more than the law requires. I say it again because it's very important, and they spend hundreds of thousands of euros for supporting teachers, going to schools, for press releases, for material for teachers, and it's all available for free. So this is also a commitment. You have to look at it. That was my statement to defend the industry.
Thank you. Dziękujemy bardzo za ten.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your comment. Well, just very briefly, I would like to refer to the business world. Yes, Volkswagen has to comply with dozens of regulations. And even though consumers can simply stop liking Volkswagen because they feel lied to, but each car has to be tested, checked, has to comply with standards, environmental standards, quality of materials used. When we go to a factory, we will see that they have to comply with occupational health and safety regulations, labor law, and so on. So this is not a fully free market. Because if it were to be a very completely free market, there'd be no need to meet here because our data would be sold and resold 100 times. However, if someone is trying to see, and some researchers found out that Volkswagen was not transparent in terms of presenting the data, or if it is found out that a certain car is faulty in its making, or if Shell has an oil leak and pollutes a whole Mexico Bay, we see the result. However, how many programmers are able to see whether a given service is safe or not just by looking at the interface? Some who actually goes in deeper in order to see whether there are cookies, whether there are safety codes written into those services. So, of course, we should all be learning, we should all be improving our skills and competencies, but we're not always able to verify all this and check all this. So we need additional tools that would allow us to negotiate the conditions of using the internet services, because as consumers we're not as well protected as consumers in the real physical world, such as buyers of cars and so on and so forth. Facebook, being a very useful tool in our everyday life, is still needs to be used in a wise way. We have 5 more minutes, so I suppose we have time for a few more statements.
Chciałam odnieść do
I would like to say a few words on what you said about breaking the trends, and then also remind about the conclusion from yesterday. It was about a certain balance on the risk paradigm versus opportunity paradigm. How do we approach the topic of privacy online? I have this sense that the majority of comments is about the risks. When I saw the charts saying that this topic won, I started to think about this in terms of a challenge of education of youth. How this topic is a threat, why it's not attractive. And it is in the context of the paradigm of opportunities, for me, a great challenge is, and I would be interested to hear from you representing the educational sector, what we can do to make this topic attractive. Maybe we should break some trends, making our data available, not only personal data, but also an ability to rightly manage our image, to make sure that it is safe, and to make it more fashionable. Anybody would like to answer?
Precisely an answer, but a slight addition to the debate. What I wanted to add is related to the fact that yes, we need to educate children and parents and teachers, but actually when we speak about data and child privacy, then it's the question how the adults actually are handling these data. When we speak, for example, about a child who is a victim of sexual abuse, and there are, for example, journalists and other people working in the media. They are interviewing teachers, social workers, and there is this thin line when the information is you can't, by this new information on the news, you can't identify the child, and a little bit more, and then you can identify the child, and what are the consequences for the child and the family if such a breach has happened, and if there is any kind of liability, especially talking about journalists, I would say, because at least in Latvian data protection law, there is an exception that regarding journalists, well, these requirements for data processing of data of persons, you do not need to ask their permission, and usually, and so just some additional information that yes, social media, but also other kind of media like news portals, and how we as adults handle information about children. Thank you.
Thank you. Dziękujemy i prosimy jeszcze pewnie.
Please, maybe two other persons. Thanks. My dream at the end of the conference is what you've just said, that next year the paradigm of opportunity has an upper hand over the paradigm of risk, because this year it's the other way around. Well, that I would like to debunk the thesis of Kamil that it is easier in the physical world, and internet it's not the case. Because just let us take a look at what's happening in Polish schools. These famous food stores in Polish schools. It turns out that one can sell the healthy food, and the school is able to teach children how to eat healthy. This analogy well applies to what we speak here. But we have to remember that for school it's not easy to teach everyone how to protect data. Without changing the awareness of the adults and combined activity of everyone involved, we will not succeed, and the school will fail, no matter how much it will strive. Also, the school is the point where we also think about changing the awareness of adults. Thank you. Maybe the final intervention. Who would like to take the floor? There is one person who would like to take the floor. But if there is nobody, it means that this is a perfect time to, according to the schedule, to wrap it up and to finish our debate. Unless Anya would like to add something. I just wanted to share one thought. We are living in the time of the identity which is changing. Because young persons are being lost in social media. They no longer know whether they like something or not. They just are following the trends. And on the last session, we saw that we are bombarded by really contradictory pieces of advice. In the last presentation, we read that we should always have a pseudonym or alias, and then we should also create a professional identity on the network, and it seems a bit contradictory.